a good friend of mine, Jonathan Sacerdoti. Jonathan, I'm trying really hard not to explode on television and radio, my friend. You know from back in October when I was fronting something else, and we spoke many times, and I don't like what's happening in Gaza. I don't like all of that, but I was on air when October the 7th happened. I've still got friends whose kids can't wear their blazers in the high streets of London for fear. Why are we in a world where racism, obvious racism against Jews, is not seen as anything on the scale of apparently Islamophobia or other racism? By the way, I hate all racism, but I do think the Jewish community, and I thought Saturday was absolutely vile. Talk to me, my friend.
This guy, Pascal Robinson Foster, who went on stage at Glastonbury and started preaching all that hate, was bad enough. But I think the thing that was most shocking to many of us, Jews and non-Jews, was actually that apparently thousands of people in the crowd joined in. And so I think it's very important that we ask ourselves how that happened, how we got to a point where society has been so twisted into this position of chanting for death at what's meant to be a music festival. And you know, plenty of people have said it, but the last time I actually heard chanting for death at a music festival was on October the 7th, and it was at the Nova Festival in Israel, where those Palestinian terrorists came in actually in these sort of improvised aircraft and massacred people at that festival. So it's particularly sad to hear these people at Glastonbury, basically middle-class, middle-aged people, chanting for death in what's meant to be a music festival. To many people watching it, it looked like a sort of hate fest. So many people have said to me it reminded them of a Nazi rally. And I think the important thing to say about that is, because some people say that's hyperbole, but I think that what's resonating with people, what's making them think that, is that the Holocaust didn't start with 6 million dead Jews. It started with societies turning against Jews who were their neighbours, their friends, their colleagues, and openly calling for, or at least tolerating other people calling for, the death of Jews and for treatment of Jews in that way. So I think that's why it's alarming people, because they saw this audience, it's meant to be people they know, in some cases, chanting like that for death. Just utterly, utterly horrific. Can I
ask the obvious question? Because despite my anger about this lowlife, and my anger is because I've got, you know, Jewish friends, and my anger is also about a two-tier system. I'm sorry, I'm having a slight problem with my, to apologise, with my machinery. There you go. Do you think that the faceless idiots in the audience who played along with that, and I thought the way you described it was right, do you think that is because October the 7th sadly has disappeared in their minds, and all they see, just hear me out here, is what's going on in Gaza, and it's all about Netanyahu, and it's all about, you know, the argument between the Israelis and the Palestinians, etc., which is an argument that's been going on for hundreds of years and no doubt will continue. For me, that's fervent racism there, and in its. But I think it's muddied. And would it be fair to ask a prominent Jewish gentleman who I respect enormously, is Netanyahu doing you any favours? I'm being serious.
So I think what you're saying there points towards something that is important to acknowledge, which is a lot of the people in crowds like that who are chanting for something that seems horrific to many of us think they're doing so from a position of virtue or goodwill. Yeah. And I think that chanting for the death of other people is unlikely ever to really have that effect, to have a good and positive result. But I do think that many of them will believe that they're doing so because of what they consider to be horrific actions in the Gaza Strip by the IDF. So chanting for death to the IDF seems to them a sort of logical next step. I would say even in that circumstances it isn't. But what I want to say about that is I don't think any of them or many of them really have a very good idea what is happening in the Gaza Strip. And I think that's because a lot of the reporting has been heavily biased or influenced or twisted, whatever you want to say, by the reliance on Hamas and Palestinian terrorist information that's given out. And then, of course, people come back and say, well, Israel doesn't let international journalists in, so we can't really do our own journalism. But that doesn't really absolve them of the responsibility to test and investigate the information they're given, and at the very least, when they report it, to explain every single time. We can't corroborate this, we can't check it properly because we can't have journalists in there, but also because Hamas are known to manipulate the media and to lie.
Jonathan,
and they've been doing that in Iran.
I've got some breaking news actually from Avon and Somerset Police about the Glastonbury Festival. This is breaking news on Talk. Following the completion of that assessment process, we have decided further inquiries are now required and a criminal investigation is now being undertaken. A senior detective has been appointed to lead this investigation. This has been recorded as a public order incident at this time. While our inquiries are at an early stage, the investigation will be evidence-led and will closely consider all appropriate legislation, including relating to hate crimes. We have received a large amount of contact in relation to these events from people across the world and absolutely recognise the strength of public feeling. There is no place in our society for hate. Neighbourhood policing teams are speaking with people in the local communities and key stakeholders to make sure anyone who needs us knows that we are here. We hope the work we have carried out and are continuing to carry out reassures the public how seriously we are taking Saturday's events. Jonathan, your response as a Jewish journalist and broadcaster to that breaking news from Avon and Somerset Police. Looks like that tow rag might actually face the law if all things work out.
That's certainly very encouraging news that the police are taking this seriously, and it comes, of course, after the US State Department revoked the US visas for the members of that band in the light of their hateful tirade at the Glastonbury Festival, and including leading those chants for death to the IDF. So it is good now that the UK is catching up with the US. The police are saying that they're going to investigate this, and I think they really should, because what's important here is many Jewish people and many non-Jewish people have watched the so-called hate marches week after week taking place in London and around the country. And those things, very similar things, have been chanted at those, and nobody's been arrested. I think that this is the logical conclusion of the climate that we've all been living in over the last nearly 2 years now.
If there are going to be rules, in my humble opinion, the rules should pertain to every single person.